remember that. Another word he said, but you helped him drink. Yep, there you go. Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Well, the Jeremiah we're talking about today was not a bullfrog, but he had a lot to croak about. And we're looking at a passage today from Lamentations, and many believe that Jeremiah wrote Lamentations. Jeremiah was called the weeping prophet because he's the one that had to announce and predict, sort of, in a sense, to prophesy ahead of time that, look, if Israel keeps following after other gods, they're going to lose their relationship with God as they understand it, and they're going to lose Jerusalem, and they're going to go into captivity. And so he says in Jeremiah 25, says the word which came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah. This is what he said to his people. From the 13th year of King Josiah, son of Ammon of Judah, to this day, these 23 years, the word of the Lord has come to me. I have spoken to you persistently, but you would not listen. And then he goes on to say that captivity will be the consequence of your disobedience. And so that's where we are in the sermon today. In 587, before the time of Christ, the Babylonians under King Nebuchadnezzar came into Jerusalem, destroyed the city, took many of its inhabitants south into what was present day. That day was Babylon, which is sort of like Iraq in our time now. And when they went there, they lost just about everything. Before we look at some of those losses, I want to just put a little bit more of historical context. The Hebrew Bible is arranged in three sections: the law, the prophets, the writings. So they have the book of Lamentations under the writings. In our scriptures, in the Christian scriptures, we have Jeremiah and then Lamentations, because the belief is that Lamentations was written by Jeremiah. That can be discussed, but that's why it's part of our Christian, why it's in our Christian Bible where it is. And at a different place in the Hebrew scriptures. It was written as poetry, so it's not a narrative. It's not a story. It is telling a story, but it's meant to be in poetic form. So if you're familiar with parallelism in poetry, some of you English teachers or whatever you may be, in this particular portion of the Bible, this poem, as such, is written from A to Z. Every chapter, if you look in the book of Lamentations, every chapter has 22 verses, 22 letters in the alphabet, except for chapter 3, which has a multiple of 3, which is 66 verses. So what they've done, and you don't know this or we don't know this as we're reading the book of Lamentations because we don't know Hebrew. But what they've done is that every new verse begins with the next letter of the alphabet. So it's beautiful poetry as well as telling some history of the people of Israel. So it's called parallelism. The very first word of Lamentations is alas. Alas. How could this happen? How could this God who made a covenant with us and said, I will be your God and you will be my people, let us go. Let us be captives. Let us be completely oppressed by another peoples. Take us to a different land. Listen to these verses. Lamentations chapter 1, verse 1. Lonely sits the city, once great among the people. Lonely once is the city, once great among the people, meaning Zion or Jerusalem. She was the princess among all states, but she has become a slave. A thrall is what it says in Hebrew, but a slave of another people's. Chapter 2, verse 6. He, meaning God. That's how they understood. Somehow God has made this happen. God has stripped his booth, his tent of meeting, meaning the temple. The Holy of Holies. Remember what the Holy of Holies was? That was the place where only the high priest went once a year to seek forgiveness and the gratitude of God. The love of God and forgiveness through the offering in the Holy of Holies. It was so holy that only that person could go in there. And tradition says that at times Because the holiness of God is so great, they thought he might faint, or even worse. Before the presence of God, they would tie a rope around his ankle so they could pull him out if he got caught in there. The Holy of Holies has been stripped. How could God let this happen? Alas, women eat their own fruit. Chapter 2, verse 20. You remember what sieges were like? Well, you don't remember. They weren't there, were we? But if you studied your history, when they wanted to siege a city, sometimes it would take years. Because the city was fortified. It had walls. And so the enemy would simply wait it out. Right? And they would cut off your supplies. Now they had plenty of water in Jerusalem at the time because Hezekiah built the water wells, the channels. But food. So after a couple of years, who's going to win out? It got so bad that the women after their children died, ate their own children. Alas! How could God let this happen? And it even seems to them that maybe God is making this happen. It doesn't make any sense to them. And then you have the lamenter himself in Lamentations says. In Lamentations chapter 3, he says, I have forgotten what happiness is. Let me read Lamentations chapter 3 to you. Not the whole thing, but lonely sits the city, once great with people. She that was great among nations has become like a widow. The princess among states has become a slave. That's verse 1 of chapter 1. I am a man, chapter 3, who has known affliction. He makes it personalized, right? Under the rod of God's wrath, he drove on and on in unrelieved darkness. On none but me he brings down his hand again and again without cease. He has worn away my flesh and skin. He has shattered my bones. All around me he has built misery and hardship. He has made me dwell in darkness like those in the dead. He has walled me in and I can't break out. He has weighed me down with chains. And when I cry and plead, he shuts out my prayer. He has walled me in with hewn blocks. He has made my paths a maze. He's like a lurking bear to me, a lion in hiding. He has forced me off my way, mangled me. He has left me numb. He has bent his bow and made me the target of his arrows. He shot into my vitals. The shaft of his quiver. I become like a laughingstock to all people. The butt of their jibes all day long. He has filled me with bitterness, sated me with wormwood. Has broken my teeth on gravel. He has ground me into dust. My life is without peace. I have forgotten what happiness, and I have forgotten all hope. Alas, how could this happen? And as I was reading this, it reminded me of a woman who was part of my church many years ago. I decided to do a sermon series called The Microcosm Within the Macrocosm, meaning whatever's happening out there in the rest of the world, the macrocosm is happening right here. So I did sermons related to alcoholism, addiction, homosexuality, and child abuse, knowing that those things happen in the church. And the sermon I did on child abuse. Within the next month, four women came into my office and said, "That's me." And I remember one woman so well. She was 40 years old. Her father had been molesting her from 5 years old to 15 years old. I'll call her Susan. She should have been the princess, right? Like Israel. Daddy's little girl. Like Israel thought they were of God. Daddy's special one. But every night, not every night, but oftentimes between those ages, she was 40 years old, third marriage, constantly shaking, taking all kinds of meds. And she said she had never told anybody until this time. And she said, I'd like to counsel with you. I have a doctor in marriage and family, but I'm not a therapist in that way. So I said, you need to see a psychiatrist. You can still come to me. And she did. And over the years, over the months, I could see her gradually changing and gradually becoming more and more in touch with the pain. And being able to somehow work through it. And the sad thing was, her father was a deacon in a church. And she said when I was a little girl, I tried to somehow tell my Sunday school teachers, but how do you talk about that? And how does a little girl talk about that? And then do Sunday school teachers really want to hear about that? So no one listened. No one heard her voice. She cried, she wept, she wailed, she trembled every time her father came up the steps, and she prayed, "Dear Jesus, don't let this happen. After all, she was the child sitting right here." And she heard the stories about those little children coming and being cuddled by Jesus on his lap and loved. That's what a good father is. But her father betrayed every trust that she knew. Her booth, her temple, her tabernacle, like in the Israelites there, her body. The scriptures say our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. The Spirit which says you live and move and have your wonderful reality of God's love in me. And that very trust was betrayed by her father. The sexuality that is supposed to be an affirming reality of God's love and goodness. For Susan, the good was decimated by the bad and the ugly. Alas. Right? Alas. How could this happen? Where is God in the midst of this? God has a wonderful plan for my life. And this is God's plan? Makes us question sometimes, doesn't it? And it should. And this is something to be angry about, right? For us, as we experience it. We should experience the anger when someone hurts us or we see people rejected. And yet we're afraid to go to God and say, this is my experience. Because we're told as we grow up, keep a stiff upper lip. In other words, when you're trembling or when you're afraid, don't let your lip tremble. Be solid. Know that God is with you the whole time, which we believe. But so I was preaching some months later about God's love, and I saw her trembling in the back. And after everybody left, she came forward, and I never heard anybody wail like this. She came to the front, and she fell into my arms, and she just started screaming, "Why, God? Why? How could you do this? Why didn't you stop my father? I prayed time after time. I cried out to you, and you didn't hear." And was I going to say, quiet? Don't let God know that. Aren't you doubting God? Aren't you questioning God? How dare you? You better be quiet, because God's going to get you if you ask those kinds of questions. Why? No. I had to say, let him have it. In that sense, because that's how she was experiencing it. And I never experienced anything quite like that. That lament. She was the lamenter, questioning God, asking why, how come, I don't know. But that Sunday became a moment of healing for her. And I know she needed that. But one has to come to that discovery of, I'm angry at God on their own, and they'd have to be able to do it in their own way. You can't push someone in that way, and you can't say that you have to do this. But I knew and felt that was her experience, because she couldn't trust the very God she was called to love because of her life experiences at that point. And that became a turning point for her. Became a turning point. I could plant some seeds, but she had to come to that point where yes, God, I trust you enough. We tend to think that somehow God isn't pleased by our questioning and by our doubting, and yet you look back at Job's question. You look at when God wanted to destroy after in Exodus 32. When the people were worshiping the idol, Moses is on the mount, they come back down in 32, and God says, I'm going to wipe out everybody. And Moses says, no, you're not. How could you do that? Alas, why? And God changes God's mind. So sometimes we think faith is simply acceptance. But sometimes faith is the acceptance that God loves us enough to hear our heart. Many of you have been married, who have been in close relationships. Doesn't the intimacy of your relationship call you to integrity? When you're feeling happy, when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling whatever, and even when you're feeling angry, to be able to approach your spouse and saying, this is my reality. I trust your love enough for me that I can be very truthful about my experience. This is real. Hear me. Help me in my anger. Heal me as we talk about it together. That's what faith is. It's trusting the other person with my own reality, with the depths of my being. And Susan finally was able to do that with God. And she became deepened in her faith through that expression. And she was able to get off some of her medications. Healing happened. There were still relapses, yes. And the story could go on. But you remember, let me just review again. Lamentations chapter 3. He has broken my teeth on gravel, has ground me into dust. My life is bereft of peace. I forgot what happiness is. I thought my strength and hope had perished before the Lord. And it goes on and on and on and on. And then, just like with her, there was this pregnant pause, where she was finally able to sort of get in touch with the birth of anger, but also the birth of trust enough to trust a loving God. Lamentations 3, 21. It was alas, right? How could God? But verse 21. But this I call to mind. And in this I have my hope. The kindness of the Lord is never ended. His mercies are not spent. They renewed every morning. What? Great is thy faithfulness. So learning from lament, some closing words. Scream and shout your discontent. God can handle that. Someone who loves you can handle that. Who said, cursed be the day I was born? Anybody know that? Job. Who also said, though he slay me, I will serve him. Job. We can be and do both. Both are honest expressions of our human experience. So have the chutzpah, the tenacity, to be able to tell the truth about who you are. That's part of the marital. That's part of the integrity in a relationship. And then in verse 28, the writer says, "Let him sit alone, the one who is going through grief, and be patient." That it's good for a person to do that, to be patient. Yes. Now I hope you were hearing there that the reason why Israel is in captivity is their understanding is because of their sin. This woman is in captivity not because of her sin, but because of another's. But regardless of what we're going through in life, we stand up. Yes, we have the chutzpah to say this is our reality, but we also sit down and be silent and ask the heavy questions. This would not be on her part, but on ours. What have I missed? How have I missed the mark of God's best intentions for my life? So shout it out, sit down and think, and then seek and share. Verse 40 says, "Let us search and examine our ways." And so many times, this kind of thing is in the closet. Or the grief or the things you're struggling with, you keep in the closet. And the monster only gets bigger, and it eats you up, or it comes out in other types of relationships. And God calls us to search our hearts, but to seek out somebody else that we can be real with and genuine. If you've been a part of a small group that cares for one another, you know the healing that comes with being truthful about your heart. And someone putting their arm around you and saying, "Yeah, I'm with you." Maybe like the song says, "I don't have the words to say, but I'm with you. I am with you." Galatians 6:2 says, "Share one another's burdens, so that you fulfill the law of Christ." What is the law of Christ? Love God, love one another. And you do that most deeply with intimate relationship, sharing the depths of your heart. It begins Lamentations 3 with the words, I am a man under affliction. Are you the man or the woman under some type of affliction? The alas shouts out in your heart. Remember this. But. It's a big but, ladies and gentlemen. But this I call to mind. The steadfast love of the Lord never ends. It is new every morning. It is new when? Every morning. Every morning you wake up in the sunshine of God's love. Every morning you wake up to a new opportunity to be reminded of God's mercy. Every morning the kindness of God's love is for you. And it's another day to know of God's good work and possibilities in you. Every day you wake up, even as you're reminded perhaps of the hurts of the life, the ultimate hope is that God is in the midst, turning your chaos into new creation. And you're part of working out your own salvation, as Philippians 2:13 says. You're part of working out your own wholeness in life is the integrity to finally be able to say who you are in your heart to God and probably to someone else. Every morning is a fresh, a second chance to discover that God's grace is ample. Every morning. We can say and sing. Great is thy faithfulness.